All right, everyone, we'll get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Lewis, and I am head of partnerships at Arco Partners. And today we're here joined by the founder and CEO of Saga XYZ, Rebecca Liao, and she also has past experience in Web3. And today we're going to present to you guys here on Because Bitcoin Twitter Spaces everything about Rebecca and her journey in Web3 and everything going on in Saga XYZ, which personally I'm very excited for. Just a little bit of a TLDR for you guys. Saga's protocol aims to eliminate trade-offs of multi-chain, single-chain, app-chain models by acting as a multi-chain hub, focuses on attracting Web3, NFT, metaverse, universe game protocols, things of that nature. And it's going to have a lot of things to do with RollUps as a service. And they have things such as no-code deployment and also a shared sequencer set. But we'll let Rebecca handle that. So Rebecca, it's good to have you here. And also we're joined by Theo Payne, who is a blockchain analyst and a good friend of the show and a future partner here at the Arco Partners. How are you doing, Rebecca? Good to have you here.
Hey, Luis, I'm good. How are you? I am very happy to be on. And because Bitcoin has a great series of these Twitter spaces and podcasts, and I am very glad to be the latest guest to be able to talk to your audience.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you very much for the kind words. We always appreciate that. And so I guess we can start it off by saying, how was your journey into Web3 and what brought about the genesis of Saga XYZ? I saw the presentation you guys did in Cosmoverse back in September. And what really excited me is that you guys had I think it's about 100 innovators that are just ready to deploy there on Saga, and everything that you guys are doing with chainlets and things with Celestia, as far as like the blockchain modularity and the rollups as a service. How did all that come about?
Yeah, great question. So I'll start with how I got into Web3 to begin with. And my journey started in, I want to say, around 2015, 2016 timeframe. So my first startup ever was in AI. And I did that for about a year and a half, heading up business development there as part of an early team for a company called Globality. And that was great. We hit unicorn status very, very quickly. And then we started the scaling operation from there. And around the same time, I was starting to hear a lot about Bitcoin, crypto in general. Ethereum started to become a thing. And my big thing is democratizing financial services. I come from a background where I was looking for ways to aid development of underprivileged populations, organizations, societies. And the potential that I saw for crypto was incredible. So I took a leap of faith and I left Globality to co-found SKUChain with Zaki Manian, who is one of the original builders in Cosmos. So SKUChain is much more DeFi focused. It is providing short-term liquidity to small, medium-sized businesses. I was co-founder COO there for about 4 years, growing the platform to about 5 billion in annual volume. And after 4 years, I thought, okay, I'm ready for the next adventure. No shortage of cool things happening in the crypto space. And I was going to just kind of survey the landscape and see which project I would potentially want to join. At the same time, I was feeling the pull of a separate career, actually, because I've always been engaged in politics. And I was part of the Clinton and Biden presidential campaigns, both in 2016 and 2020. In 2016, there was no opportunity to go to DC, but in 2020, we actually won. So for a bit of time in 2020, when I was living in DC, thinking that I would be joining the administration and really preparing to move out there and start a new life. But as you can imagine, after doing 2 startups, you are no longer suited for federal bureaucracy. The culture shock is just too great. So I called up Zaki and I said, hey, I think I'd like to stay in crypto. He's very big in Cosmos to this day. He's definitely one of the key leaders there. And he heard about this team within Tendermint, which is the core entity that launched Cosmos many, many years ago, that was trying to figure out new ways to bring people into Cosmos. How do we make it easier for people to essentially get onto their own chains? And again, it really spoke to my desire to use Web3 as a way to democratize access to digital services, to infrastructure, and really to move towards the greater goal of self-determination in your digital life. And so Saga was started around this time last year. So January 2022, we came out of stealth late March 2022, and we closed our seed round in May, and it's been off to the races ever since. You mentioned our innovators. So the Saga Innovator Program is our ecosystem program. And at the end of last year, we closed our second cohort. So we currently have 120 projects that are building on Saga. The vast majority of those are focused on gaming and entertainment. Cohort 3 is currently open. If anyone is building something really cool and you're interested in joining our ecosystem, getting the benefits of that program, we'd definitely love to hear from you. But yeah, that's how Saga came together. And really, our whole journey has been a function of listening really, really hard to what developers are looking for. Developers wanted an easy way to get onto high performance infrastructure for blockchain. And so that was really how we positioned ourselves last year. Majority of our efforts were spent there. But now you're seeing with respect to Celestia that RollUps are a real solution. But they needed more infrastructure support in order to become something that could be easily adopted. And that's where our sequencers as a service product comes in. So quite happy about the partnership with Celestia. There will be more to come that are like that. And it's continuing this theme of anytime you want dedicated block space as a developer, you can come get it at Saga. So that's been the arc so far.
Yeah, I really like what the RollUp service is doing, and I think that's going to really help out the builders and the user experience through things like tailored UI, lower OPEX, and definitely more design options for the native token economies. And definitely with what's going on in Cosmos, there's a lot of solutions being created for easy rollup deployment as far as SDKs, no-code interfaces, and of course, what's going on with the decentralized sequencer assets. And when I was looking through Saga a couple of months back, I noticed that with what you guys have with Chainlets, that the platform essentially allows for deployment across many virtual machines. Many virtual machines, and could enable things like customer engagement through key interaction features, and also act as sort of a bridge to other ecosystems. That allows for things like seamless imports of smart contracts and facilitating the transfer of game assets. And when you have things like that, it saves devs time. It saved devs time, quite a bit, And what's been going on with like the metaverse developments within Saga. Just a bit of a background on myself. I've been in the Web3 and crypto industry since 2017, and what caught my attention very early on was the Cosmos SDK, and as far as like what the mission was to make everything interoperable and very seamless, and things regarding Tendermint and all that stuff. I was very early on to things that were built on it, things like Thorchain, the original Terra, things of that nature. And one thing that those platforms were recognized as is always having the cleanest user interface and the easiest onboarding, especially when it comes to things like innovation. And with Saga, it's like you guys are essentially being at the forefront when it comes to onboarding this new economy. So, like, what are some things that you can share with us as far as the developments come on, as far as like things like the metaverse and GameFi and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for those kind words about Cosmos and the chains that have been built on Cosmos so far. So Cosmos, I would say that it was really a dream of people who were highly technically brilliant, but also very idealistic, because the thing about the Cosmos SDK is it's not a chain. So there is the Cosmos Hub, obviously, and it's staked with Atom. But the Cosmos SDK is an SDK that anybody can take to build their own chain. And so you have a lot of ecosystems out there that have Cosmos as the underlying technology, but you don't hear about it. So Thorchain, definitely one of those examples. I think people were generally aware that Terra was built on Cosmos. I mean, really, really unfortunate what happened with that project. If there is any sort of consolation we could take from a tech perspective, is that it held up during the the downturn, the collapse last year. Binance is also a Cosmos chain. Avalanche is in many ways inspired by Tendermint consensus as well, and the list goes on. So there's been a lot of influence in terms of tech, and I think that's why Cosmos has a lot of developer mindshare. And you really hit on one of the key points, Thea, which is interoperability. So I think what Cosmos realized is, okay, great. We all have these dedicated chains now. Everyone's got their own chain. And it goes to this thesis of self-sovereignty, self-determination in Web3. But what are you going to do on your own chain? We can't all be Ethereum. So that's where interoperability comes in. These chains have to be able to speak to one another. And in, I believe, 2020, Cosmos released IBC, which is inter-blockchain communication. And it is a messaging protocol. So this is not a bridge. There are no assets being held on IBC. This is just a communication protocol for transferring assets back and forth between chains that have IBC. So at a high level, how it works is there's one chain. It's going to send a message. It's got a light client. It sends a message to the other chain. As long as the other chain also has a light client and has validated the transaction independently on their end, then the transfer of assets can take place. So this is incredibly secure. There have been, I want to say, about 500 billion in assets already transferred using IBC. Not a problem at all. No hacks, nothing. Again, there is no bridge. There is no pool of assets to hack. It's just a messaging protocol. So on Saga, the Saga chain is a Cosmos chain. We are built on top of the Cosmos SDK and the Tendermint core. The chainlets, so these are the dedicated chains that are stood up on Saga. They are also Cosmos chains in their own right, which means that they come with the full set of Cosmos features, including IBC. So all Saga chainlets can speak to one another. They can obviously speak to our Saga mainnet, and they can speak to any chain that is IBC enabled. So that includes all the Cosmos chains in the greater Cosmos ecosystem. It also includes chains in other ecosystems that are exploring IBC and actively implementing it. So Avalanche would probably be the best example of that. Now, what does that mean for metaverse and GameFi? So I think a lot of people from the creative industries, they were looking at this and thinking, I have no idea what to do with this. Yes, I understand that when NFT values are going through the roof, fine, we all chase that profit opportunity. But when it's a bear market like this, we might be getting out of that bear market soon, but when it's down, you have to ask yourself, what is the true value of this technology? And I think what we're finding is that why people gravitate towards Web3 for building metaverses is it allows for that community building. It allows for that decentralized generation of content. And in order to really achieve that, you not only need the performance that having a dedicated chain will offer you, but you also need that interoperability between chains for you to have true ownership of your assets. I mean, if we talk about NFTs that are categorically owned by you and no one really has the authority to say otherwise, that doesn't really matter, or it isn't fully justified if you cannot move your NFT assets elsewhere. And so interoperability is really key to having this greater vision of that decentralized generation of content. So I think that's where things are going over the course of the next year. It's an incredibly exciting time to be both a builder in this space, but also a consumer in this space. If you are a gamer, if you enjoy collecting NFT assets, if you enjoy consuming creative things, then I think this next period finally has the infrastructure that'll allow for the flowering of those kinds of products.
Yeah, I primarily came from the DeFi sector. I didn't really get into NFTs until like Q4 2021, when all these layer ones that came out from the ICO era were booming. You had things like AVAX, Solana, all these projects that were incubated during that time. But the thing is, they couldn't really scale. And given that I came from the DeFi side of things, I noticed that once the Stargate update came into, I believe it was in February of 21, and then we had Osmosis launch, and then of course things like Juno and all that stuff. So definitely with rollups, they're going to allow things like vertical scaling by, like as you said, packing more transactions into existing block space and offer customizable execution environments and modular components for all these dApps. And for these rollups as service projects that focus on rollups and single ecosystems, with them aiming for fully agnostic solutions for execution and all those things, I feel like what the industry tried to do in late 21, ultimately, I think that carries into the next business cycle when it comes to like the growth sector. And for me, like, I understand that typically when people talk about growth sectors, they look at things like in the US equity markets, like things in NASDAQ, things of that nature. But for me, I'm looking towards like the next cycle of innovation, which to me are things like Web3 and the digital asset space. And Cosmos is one of those things that have really been in the industry almost as long as Ethereum. I believe Tendermint has been in the space since 2013, 2014. So my next question to you, Rebecca, is given how we had these metaverse platforms struggle with lag times, like things like Decentraland or things that haven't been able to fully scale out yet, like the Sandbox and other things that really just served as, I call it extraction of value, right? With something like Axie, where it's really just about farming the token and it doesn't really create more onboarding into Web3. So with all this at Saga XYZ, how can we help onboard the next 5-10 million users onto Web3? How does that look like? Because for the Cosmos SDK right now, we have the advantage that we have is onboarding like the DeFi natives, using bridges and things of that nature, quick transactions, things like that. So with all that being said, how do we onboard like the next few million users specifically onto Cosmos, given how strong like the stack is for devs?
Yeah. So it's a question that we keep thinking about all the time because at Saga, we are the infrastructure layer. So we want to provide chainlets to developers as quickly, easily, and cheaply as possible. Having said that, if you look at our innovator program, you'll see that the vast majority, really 80% of those projects are in gaming. Now, of those, the majority are games or game studios, game platforms, but we also have quite a lot of game infra and game tooling. So things like wallets, things like game launchers, distribution platforms, publishers, because our team does have a deep background in gaming, and we understand that even for Web2 gaming, where the development cycle is pretty well understood at this point, there is a lot that goes into a game. It doesn't necessarily have to be the equivalent of a feature film like Call of Duty, but there's nevertheless a lot that goes into a successful game. And so when we think about making it easier for developers, we think about providing the full stack. So partnerships are incredibly important for us. Most of this game infra we will not build ourselves because there are businesses or projects that are stood up specifically to build those tools. They are the best at it, and it's much better, much more efficient, and it'll get to our developers faster if we work with them. So we're thinking of the full stack first and foremost. And then in terms of how do we get the end user in? So one key contribution that we're making here is we are giving as much freedom to the developer as possible. Most developers are tied up by the fact that when they develop a game on Ethereum, for instance, or Solana, or any one of these monolithic chains, in addition to paying for whatever that in-game asset is, or if the game decides to have a native token, in addition to paying that token, there needs to be a gas fee that is paid to the chain itself. And with so many different chain options out there, and with the complexity of wallets, that stops most new users from coming into this space. So what we said to developers was, we don't care how you monetize. With Saga, you obviously have to compensate the validators for providing security for your infrastructure, but we settle that fee directly between us. So the Saga token is visible only between the developer and us. On the front end, we are invisible unless the developer wants to use the Saga token for gas for whatever reason. But we say to developers, you can offer your game entirely for free. You can offer freemium. You can only charge for in-game assets. You can charge in fiat. You can charge in your own native token. You can charge in any token that is IBC enabled. So that includes things like ETH and Sol, Matic, et cetera. And so we want to give that kind of freedom to developers. They need that flexibility because at the end of the day, I think that most Web3 developers are also entrepreneurs in their own right. And so they have understood a market. They know that they need to do certain things in order to successfully attract end users. And our job is to make it as easy as possible for them to do what they need to do. So that's how we see it. Having said that, I mean, we do have some understanding of what it takes to make a successful game, how to get user acquisition. And so we also have something called a Saga Academy, where we share our knowledge about best practices with these developers. You know, how exactly do you go through the whole life cycle of a game? At what point do you engage a distribution platform or a publisher, et cetera? So we think about the end to end, and we're doing everything we can in terms of empowering the developer so that the developer can go ahead and build something that will attract a lot of end users.
So with the chainlets, it's essentially a blockchain that is customized for particular applications. And as you said, it could be configured to many virtual machines like Cosm and Solana and things like Move. And how has that been like to communicate with other things that build on those protocols, specifically Move? Like I know it's a new programming language, and I wonder how that's going to look like. Is there anything that sticks out to you working with these chains that don't really have a full ecosystem? Given the fact that usually when you have things launch on Cosmos, it's ready to go. Like it's ready to go from day one. You know, you had Terra with their ecosystem before. You had Juno. You had things like Osmosis and all their liquidity pools and things regarding DeFi. So for Saga, is there like a new process in communicating with these other chains, or is it more seamless, as in bridging to things like Ethereum and what have you?
Yeah, it's a great question because the motivation behind making ourselves VM agnostic is we ultimately want to go where the developers are. So right now, the EVM is the most popular development environment, but in Web3. But we know that WASM is very popular within Cosmos in particular, and so it's likely the next VM that will support things like the Move VM or the Solana VM, JavaScript VM. Many other projects out there have started to work on these VMs because they see the market opportunity. So with Move, for instance, it is a new programming language. Aptos and Mistin both have a lot of firepower behind them. And I think that with that firepower, they're trying to make things happen. And so developers are motivated to build that Move VM that is specific to Tendermint. So all these virtual machines, they can't just be used on Saga or anything in Cosmos right out of the box. They have to be customized to work with Tendermint consensus. And so that's a project. And either we do it in-house or we rely on partners who are spending all their time doing this. So we've relied on the latter strategy so far. But again, the whole point is to just follow the developer. Now, once you have this virtual machine environment available on Saga, it does mean that the developer is free to use that virtual machine environment to build. So if you are accustomed to building in Solidity, for instance, then EVM should be no problem for you. If you are accustomed to building in the Solana-based Rust language, then building in a Solana VM on Saga will also not be a problem for you. But to be clear, just because you've built the application on Saga doesn't mean that you automatically have a bridge back to quote unquote the mother chain. Just because you build on Saga using EVM doesn't mean that now all of a sudden you have a secure bridge back to Ethereum. That bridge needs to be provided for. And we are not huge fans of doing one-off chains because one bridge is already complicated enough, and we know the security risks there. So there are some partners that we're working with, like an Axelar, for instance, that has figured this out using IBC as sort of their core technology. And it's bridges like that that will allow, for example, a game that's already built on Solana, but they're concerned about performance. They can stand up an instance on Saga, and using Axelar, they can bridge those assets back to Solana, and they can port all of their users over from the original game. That's just one example, but that's how we see the architecture ultimately playing out. And we want people to go multi-chain. We want people to get on the infrastructure that serves them best. And so we're freely allowing them to use those bridges to go back to mother chains. And of course, using IBC to not just communicate within the Saga ecosystem, but even beyond that.
We have someone here, Payne. He wanted to say a few things. Payne, what's up, brother? Go ahead, man.
How's it going, Wabi?
Pretty good, man. Good to have you here, brother.
Thanks for coming up, Rebecca. I'm super excited about Saga. I was reading about it, and I really think that the architecture is incredible, and the fact that you guys are focusing on devs is amazing. And just to like kind of go off what you said with how different languages can all be used to code, did you see that there was like a big need from developers who, like, let's say someone learned Solidity specifically, and then someone else learned Rust, and they're kind of stuck to being able to only develop on these certain chains. I think it's really, really neat that they could all just basically code on Saga. And so was that something that you noticed, where there was all these different people who like might have only known one language, and now there was a need for that to happen, basically?
Yeah, Payne, that's a great question. So I think the reason why we wanted to offer these different kinds of VMs was definitely to cater to developers who had become very comfortable in one language and they wanted to continue with that. That was definitely part of the thinking. But also, I think when we started with Saga a year ago, we really would have been quite happy if developers had used us to get onto their own dedicated chains for their new projects. So developer gets an idea for a really cool game, and they think to themselves, okay, what's the best environment to build this in? Let me go to Saga, stand up my chainlet or multiple chainlets to support this game, and right off into the sunset. But what we realized is that because of our two-tier token model, where on the front end, you can have any token or no token, and Saga's just on the back end, we are generally available for scaling purposes. And so what we're seeing with some of these games, especially the bigger ones, is they're not necessarily looking to migrate wholesale onto Saga. They're looking to scale what they already have. So if they've already built something on a Solana or on Ethereum, on Polygon, et cetera, but they're running into scaling issues, then you can open up another instance on Saga. But in order to open up that instance, the VM that you develop in for Saga, it has to be compatible with what you used for the other chain. So we needed the flexibility in the development environment to also be a true scaling solution. So if you already have something, you can just scale it out on Saga. We focused a lot on gaming and entertainment applications so far, but you can tell with the structure that it's not just individual applications, it's also other layer ones that can scale. And we announced one of those partnerships already. That's with Come To Us, which is the largest mobile game developer in the world. We announced that last November, but there are more to come. There are more to come in the pipeline that we have yet to announce, but we will imminently. And we're excited. We're excited that people who are resourceful and motivated to build, that they look at Saga's architecture and they see multiple ways in which they can utilize these chainlets.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I think it's really brilliant. The architecture, how you guys don't really have any fees that you need to charge anyone to run a chain. And the network effects of that are really going to be incredible in my opinion, because like, let's say, you can have like free to play and you don't need to like buy the token and then, send it over to the wallet and yada, yada, yada to just like get on and play the game.
Yep.
I think that's really neat. And I think that's really unique and something that I haven't seen much with other projects that I've looked at. And that goes into my question. What projects are you really excited that are developing on Saga? Like, I know you mentioned there's a bunch of games coming out, but yeah, just like, I don't know what that is already announced. Could you tell us about?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have the full roster of current Saga innovators. So cohorts 1 and 2 up on our website under the innovators tab, but a few to shout out right off the bat. We love Castaways GG. Castaways GG is a game developed by the Web3 gaming studio Branch GG. And their founder, Dayton, he's incredible. He's a Teal Fellow. And his story, I think, is really the archetype for why we push for Web3 gaming. So he was big into Minecraft, felt that once Minecraft was taken over by Microsoft, that the Minecraft community was not really respected. And so he wanted to build something where you wouldn't need control of big tech in order for this thing to run. And so I would say Castaways is a truly community-driven game. And it's appropriate for all ages, but it's also something that a lot of, I think, people our age, that adults can get into. Community-driven games like a Minecraft or even Roblox traditionally have attracted younger crowds, which is fantastic. But I think that there was a gap for people who are older, still very much interested in gaming, interested in the feeling of community and belonging that playing a game with your friends online really affords you. So really, really love Castaways. What else? There is a gaming studio called P12 out of China that was backed by Binance, and they are fantastic. I mean, they're gaming veterans in China. They have a portfolio of, I want to say, about 40, 50 games already building on them. They have a game editor. So in the same way that everybody uses either Unity or Unreal to build their game in Web 2 and Web 3, frankly, what P12 has really thought through is if you are a Web 3 native game, then what are the elements that you really need in order to have a successful and engaging game? So really love working with them. Then we have honestly, people are getting way more ambitious. So somebody like Venity, for instance, Venity it's Pokemon Go, but Web3. So you remember how fun it was to play Pokemon Go, if only for a short period of time with your friends. You go all around.
Oh, of course, it was a blast.
It was a blast, right? It was amazing. And I mean, you remember that community feeling, and also, among your group of friends, you went all over town, probably like annoying all the store owners. But you can heighten that feeling, obviously, with Web3 and how community-centric we are. So those are just some examples of really cool titles that are either out or coming out. We also have very cool game infra. So people like Venly, for instance, who they're specifically looking at the problem of the multi-chain wallet, which is what games ultimately need in order to make sure the user doesn't get like caught up on just onboarding or signing up for a game. So they're super exciting. There are many others, but we have a games jam coming up February 8th, and that's our first hackathon where we'll have a group of about 8 teams demoing what they've already built on Saga. And super excited to see if having this new infrastructure really opens up the possibility space for what they can build. I suspect the answer is yes, but yeah, there's lots of really, really cool projects.
Yeah, it sounds great. I think it's pretty cool too how, like, for example, if you have a multi-chain wallet on Saga, to my understanding, like, let's say there's a game that's on both AVAX and Saga, right? And then you collect in-game items that are NFTs in the Saga one, and then you want to, like, let's say play with your friend that's on AVAX, you could theoretically transfer it over and like use those assets on AVAX, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty neat. That's awesome. I think that's really innovative.
Thank
And
you.
that kind of, yeah. Anyways, I was also going to ask you about the Saga Academy. So
Mhm.
is that just like for devs specifically, or is that like for anyone that can come up and basically learn about Saga? And then I was going to ask too, is like, what kind of things do you teach in there? Is it more so like learning languages, or is it like things specific to Saga? Yeah, I just wanted to have your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So Saga Academy is really meant to educate about Web3 more generally, but then focusing very quickly on gaming and entertainment. So we have some articles in there that are called beginner articles because truly, if you know nothing about Web3, if you've maybe heard of Bitcoin or Ethereum, you can go to those articles and hopefully like have a good definitive source for understanding what Web3 is all about. What are some of the major programming languages? Why does it matter? Um, and we have some content that is tailored to that particular audience, but the vast majority of content is more on the Web3 native side, and then once we get to more advanced content, it really is for developers because at that point we're teaching you how to build a game. So it goes from what is an NFT all the way to when you're picking a chain for multi-chain strategy, what should the considerations be? If you have a game that is about to be launched, how should you think about distribution? So it really is pretty wide ranging in terms of the kind of materials that we offer. The goal ultimately is to give people a source that they can trust, and that is pretty clear about why we're building in this particular space. As we get to more and more future releases of the Saga protocol, there will be more developer documentation in there. Right now, all developer docs are private to the Saga Innovator Program. So it's only innovators that are building on Saga at the moment and testing on it. But with future releases, we will put out more sample code, sample games, and certainly once mainnet is out, all of our documentation will be there for how you launch a chainlet. So it really runs the gamut. But suffice to say, if you're interested in Web3, if you're interested particularly in Web3 gaming and NFT projects and infrastructure, then it's a great resource for you.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, that brings me to my next question. I was going to ask you. So, to my understanding, the validators set the commission rate, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool because other chains it's just based off the current volume like of transactions at the time when the transaction is validated,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's really unique and that's pretty innovative. I was just wondering what you guys like, what made you guys think of that, basically.
Yeah. So to clarify there, if you guys have some time, and if you're feeling a little sleep deprived, you can go look at our token economics paper on our website. But it details what Saga token economics is all about. And the reason why I bring that up in this conversation is it really is focused on the validators. So we have a pretty unique token model. You can already tell with respect to the two-tier structure where on the front end we are not visible, we're only visible on the back end with respect to the infrastructure, that it's already starting to get into pretty novel territory. Now, with respect to chainlets, we had a few goals for chainlets, but one of the primary goals was to commoditize them. So we think that block space should be a commodity in Web3. I think we spend way too much time thinking about the high and variable gas fees for getting transactions on a network. I think that in some ecosystems, there's probably a little too much visible chatter between validators about like what should be done in this ecosystem. And I think for developers, it's a huge turnoff. Honestly, they just want a place to deploy their application. So for us, we wanted to definitely reward the validators very handsomely for providing validation security on Saga, but we also wanted to abstract away as much of the complexity as possible. And we also wanted to get the cost down as much as possible. So when you say that there's no commission, or no, that there is a commission and it's set by the validators. So there is a commission, but it is going to be flat. Where the validators get to set their own terms is in the pricing of the chainlets. So the way it works is every epoch, which is probably going to be about a day, we run an auction. This auction is called musical chairs. And y'all know the game musical chairs, where you're standing in a circle around a group of chairs and music plays. Y'all keep moving around the circle, and when the music stops, you have to sit down. If you are without a chair, you're out of the game. So how it works for our auction is every epoch, validators are going to post the price that they would accept for providing security for a chainlet. The lowest set of prices wins. And that is a set of validators whose pricing will control for that particular epoch. Now, within that set of prices, the highest price is going to be the set price for chainlet security. So in other words, let's just call it $5. If the highest price in that winning set is $5 for that particular validator, then the overall price for validating that chainlet is going to be 5 times the number of validators that are validating each chainlet. So that's how we set pricing. And for the validators who bid even lower than that, then of course they can recognize a nice margin over and above what they had been expecting. For validators who bid higher than that, then we're thinking right now about how to best handle that, because we could just have them out of the validator set for that particular epoch. And that is a very, very strong incentive for them to bid even lower next time. Or we allow them to be a part of the validator set, but obviously they're not going to make the margin that they've been hoping for, because the price that they're going to get is lower than what they had bid for. Obviously, there are security implications there, and that really, it is the most important thing, to make sure that the network stays secure and all the chainlets stay secure. But that's how chainlets are priced, and that's how validators have a say as to what they're willing to accept to provide security in this system. But as much as we are depressing the prices of chainlets, and that's coming onto the validators, I mean, I wouldn't cry too hard for the validators. They still get inflation staking rewards. So they're very, very well situated. But you can see here that there's a new dynamic that we have introduced, which is, how do you price infra in the cheapest way possible and do it in a predictable way, again, to make it easier for developers.
So, Rebecca, with Web3, the focus seems to be not really trying to attract the current users with it, but more of more of the Web2 side, individuals that play things like Fortnite, Call of Duty, also some of these MMORPGs. With a lot of platforms like that, it usually offers like a lot of incentive to keep on playing, and more than anything, it's fun, right? So as far as like the development goes, right? How does blockchain, gaming, Web3, GameFi, and all that stuff? How is the development different in this platform compared to something like Web2? And with what you guys are building, it really seems that we're getting closer to having like an SDK that could be compatible with like a hardware aspect, possibly like an Oculus Rift or what have you, with things like AR, and maybe VR. But I'm definitely more bullish on augmented reality more than virtual reality. So with Saga, would it be possible within the next few years to potentially add some hardware components of it? I know there are some projects within Web3 that tried to do that, but the resources from, say, like 2017, 2018 were very limited compared to now, given the amount of growth that there's been within this ecosystem. So I guess it's sort of like a two-part question, which is the first one. It's basically, how does the development on these games differ from the more traditional growth from Web 2? And also, would it be possible with the current stack that's being built out, perhaps in the next 5 years, 10 years, would it be possible to have this development kit being implemented into something that's tangible, like hardware devices
Mm-hmm.
that can help out with things like virtual reality and AR as well?
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. So I'll answer the second question first because it's frankly the easier one. With respect to AR, VR, and I'm with you. I think AR is the more promising, and frankly, for those of us humans who live in the real world, the more interesting proposition. Um, it's grown a lot over the last year. So we actually have some innovators, most notably SnowX and ThirdVerse in our innovator program, who are focusing specifically on that. So the NFTs generated in their AR experiences are freely tradable on chain. But they recognize that there is an audience of gamers and other people who are interested in metaverse experiences who want to do AR plus the NFT aspect, which is great. And I do think that that'll continue to grow. And what Saga would aspire to do in that case is we would want to offer up a platform with enough options such that you can complete your full stack for that particular game or metaverse experience within Saga. So between our partners and us, you would be able to do the full thing. Now, for our partners, I mean, we have many in each category. So we have many game launchers, many wallets, et cetera. And we at Saga, we can certainly make recommendations based on what we know of the innovators and partners, but it's ultimately up to the developers to decide which options they want to go with. But yes, we do want to create that stack. With respect to your first question, so I would say in terms of how development is going to be different. So I would say that your point of entry for a lot of Web2 games is a distribution platform of some kind. So you found a game on Steam, for instance, and that was your first time hearing about it. And that's how you and your friends congregate so that you can play the game. In Web3, community comes from a slightly different source. So the distribution platform so far has been the wallet. So if you have a wallet with a bunch of in-game assets or tokens in it, then that is your gateway to a particular ecosystem of games. Now, I don't think that's going to change in the short term. And so as a game dev, you're thinking to yourself, okay, I obviously want to go to a community and ecosystem that's doing well, because likely then there are going to be more wallets that are stood up specifically to hold in-game assets and tokens for that ecosystem. And then once you have people sort of, quote unquote, ensnared with that wallet, then how do you continue to build community there? Because a lot of the time, and this is true for Web2 as well, is you get a big spike in activity at the very beginning, but unless you keep offering engagement, people are going to start falling off. And that is what's happened, honestly, to a lot of Web3 games in this bear cycle, because the rewards are no longer there for playing the game. And so people start to lose interest, which is too bad. But I think that for game devs that want to continue to incentivize their players to stay on, it really is about that engaging experience. And the thing about Web3 that is unique is really that community aspect to it. So you want to, I would say the key piece of advice is you want to let go a little bit. So you at the core team, you have spent so much time and resources building this game. That's wonderful. But if you've done your job right, then your community is going to love your game more than you. Let them add to it, whether it's characters, in-game assets, their own sort of creative contribution to this community. Maybe they want to write a little soundtrack for you. Let them build the game and extend it alongside you. And that is a really nice thought. I think a lot of people would love to go for it from just a fun perspective as well as from a business perspective. It is hard to pull off. Technology-wise, because you're losing control of your code base. In other words, you're making a game that's supposed to be proprietary, more open source. But that's something that Web3 really excels at, right? Like, how do we make open source pay? I think Web3 has done an excellent job at that. So that's really where game devs who are trying to build specifically for Web3 have to start thinking about, how do I enable my community to contribute back to my game? You need info for that.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of things within Cohort 2 that really stick out to me. I see Muse, Fair Play, Thirdverse, BCA Labs, One Magic School. You guys are essentially coming out right off the bat with an entire ecosystem. And that's one thing that should honestly be industry standard. I think long gone are the days of like rampant speculation as far as, oh, here's a new consensus protocol. It's just a bunch of like not really false promises, but more along of like under deliverance. And I definitely like what you guys are taking, implementing that within the Cosmos SDK. And one thing that I've always admired about the Cosmos ecosystem is the community. It's more of like a collaborative effort towards one goal, and that's essentially interoperability, where everyone sort of comes together. And I think that's a pretty good use case when it comes to things like NFTs, like GameFly, Web3, all that stuff. And the ethos of Web3, I would say, would be ownership. And with what you guys are doing with Chainlets and with some of these names and the innovator program are doing, I do believe you guys will create so much value. And I see we let time kind of slip out of our hands. We only have about 4 minutes left. So guys in the audience, if you want to come up and give some of your statements, ask some questions, feel free to turn on that request button and I'll bring you right up. Just as a reminder for you guys, if you just came into the space or you've been in and out, this space will be re-uploaded onto our YouTube because Bitcoin 5 to 10 minutes after the space is concluded. And we're here with the CEO of Saga XYZ, Miss Rebecca Liao. And we're just getting to know her journey in the digital asset space and also what's being built within the ecosystem, and also some things being incubated, which personally I can't wait to test out. And we'll give it a few moments. If anyone wants to come up, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we'll start to wrap up here. We're coming in on the hour, and we want to be respectful of everybody's time.
Thanks so much for having me on, Theo. Louis, Payne, this has been super fun. You guys are super well versed in Cosmos, actually really, really impressive. And it's clear that you've been observing this ecosystem for a long time because you understand the dynamics of it, the history of it. And really want to thank you for all your support and honestly for all your efforts within Web3. I mean, I can tell that you're in it because you truly passionately believe in it. And if there's any positive to have come out of this bear cycle, it is that people like you have really stayed in this space and then risen within it, because it's really people like you that will take us all forward.
Thank you. We appreciate the kind words.
Thank
Rebecca.
you so much.
We really do. And I definitely feel that even though it is a Web2 product, I do believe that things like Twitter, especially with their Twitter Spaces feature and the things they're doing with Mask Network as far as like NFTs and all that stuff goes, I definitely feel that should Twitter be open sourced, I definitely feel that the Cosmos SDK, but not the Cosmos SDK, but the dev power within Cosmos could definitely implement that into the ecosystem. And I think it would be kind of cool. Like, say I build like a chainlet on Saga, right? And I'm here doing a Twitter Spaces. I can kind of like send my native Cosmos NFT to someone here on Twitter Spaces by just clicking on their icon, then click send on their wallet, and send it to their native Cosmos wallet. So little things like that, I definitely feel like Twitter Spaces is a great networking tool. So with that being said, we've closed on the hour. Miss Rebecca, it was an honor to host you. We look forward to strengthening our relationship with you guys here at the ARCA Partners Group. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and talk shop with us. And it's been an honor introducing you to our community. We can't wait. We can't wait to see what you guys have in line. And just as a reminder, everybody, you will be able to find a recording of this space in about 5 to 10 minutes on our Because Bitcoin YouTube channel. And thank you, everyone, for participating. I'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Miss Rebecca, thank you so much. I look forward to connecting with you afterwards. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank
Have
you
a
so
blessed
much,
day.
Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Theo. Thank you so much, Payne Lewis. This has been an absolute pleasure. And thank you to your entire audience as well for sticking with us for the full hour towards the end of the day here in the States, and then internationally, God knows what hour. But really appreciate all the thoughtful questions. It's been super fun dialogue. And you know where to find us if you'd like to learn more. We always want to hear from our community.
Yeah, I definitely joined the Discord. I'm going to be checking that out, be active in there.
Thank you.
And pay attention to all the future developments. It seems really neat, and you guys are really actually building something truly innovative, and I'm very excited.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, we wouldn't be here without support from people like you. And really, this has been a ton of fun. So keep us posted on all the goings on at Arca Partners. And again, guys, because Bitcoin, well, your audience knows this, but it's a really, really great Twitter space and an area to learn more about Web3 directly from the people who are building. So thank you so much for doing this for the community.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Take care.
Thanks so much. Take care, everyone.
The trading current is just math. It's just math. It has a 95.45% hit rate when we deviate outside of CP2 and CN2. All you had to do is recognize that 95% of the time when we get over here, under this blue line, we get some sort of mean reversion. So let's just assume you long right here. 95 out of 100 times, when I buy this, I'm gonna get some sort of bounce. It's just math. Look what would have happened as we move up. Look at the bounce that came after. And now look where we are. If you had just blindly followed the current, you take all emotions out of it, and you say, I'm going to trust the statisticians. You would have bought Dow Jones somewhere down here under 30,000, depending on how you want to measure it from absolute top to bottom, 20% move. We also have multi-time frame alerts. You don't even have to be at your computer on TradingView. You can ping your phone. Now, the current has some really awesome features, and I would urge you guys to join our Discord to get access to it. We give it away for free as a tool to the community. It's just math. There's really no need to overcomplicate things, not even in the slightest.